Pro-life students promptly arrested for chalking, quote, unborn black baby lives matter to, unquote, in an area dedicated to Black Lives Matters propaganda. Black babies ripped to shreds and processed in Planned Parenthood laboratory could not be found for comment. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start in the heart of our nation's capital as pro-life students simply do what everybody's been doing lately, chalking. But apparently, putting chalk to cement is a problem if you're not Black Lives Matter. And they will literally, so if you're Black Lives Matter and you're looting, you're participating in riots, you're screaming vulgarities into the faces of police officers, you're chalking everything, sometimes with feces. That's healthy protest.
See, I don't call that chalking. I call that a whole
pooping,
other beast
popping
of thing. Yeah. So
Pulping?
When you have students who are trying to chalk, which washes away with simple water, put that on to sidewalks, but because it says Black Preborn Lives Matter. That's wrong. But if you actually take said cement that is there and pick it up in maybe, I don't know, or brick form and then like toss it through a window of a business, that is celebrated, and you know you're just doing your right.
But here we have a situation where, again, because this is only Black Lives Matter people have the right to. This is a Black Lives Matter plaza, right? So again, I hope you understand the two Americas we are now creating, and the rule of law difference between, because this is what they've told us, right? For America's long history, there's been two rules for white people and rules for everybody else. Well, good. You've not gotten rid of that. You've just changed the way the rules work.
And again, this is where we say Black Lives Matter, yes, but Black Lives Matter, the organization, no. That's the distinction. And so whoever came up with that name was brilliant in the sense that they knew they would have you on the
brilliant in their understanding of how fascism works. So, right, of course.
That's what I'm saying. But they know that if you say, well, I don't like Black Lives Matter, then it makes you seem like a racist. Anyway, so this happened in Washington, D.C., and now those who were arrested are actually suing the city.
As they should.
For saying, that First Amendment violations.
Under the law, right? I mean, you said it earlier. These kids weren't vandalizing. That's right. And the fact that the police would even show up for this, the fact that the police were immediately on the scene to do this, to threaten these kids, to bully them, and then to arrest them for doing what in any other context would be praised as heroism.
But Dr. Duke, I thought all cops are racist and awful human beings.
Well, they are. These cops are racist.
And they're not allowed to do anything because every single incident that a cop ever engages in is somehow violent and, white supremacy.
When police officers participate in the unequal distribution of justice, they're bigots. There's something wrong with them. They're tools of the state. This is Washington, D.C. police force was told to stand down while the little church right next to the White House was almost burnt to the ground. Stand down. This is valid protest. But when two people show up to basically advocate for unborn black babies, the cops are there with warnings and handcuffs. Take a look at the video.
Continue talking, you're going to be placed under arrest. Okay.
You know they do this every Saturday, right?
Okay.
Saturday. This is completely public property.
I majored in political science. This is public property.
Every Saturday, people are here talking, and you're taking somebody, young people, and arresting them because they're simply putting Black Preborn Lives Matter. You gotta be joking.
Can you imagine if a white police officer had showed up and stood in front of black protesters and said, okay, you cross this line, you throw that rock. You insult, you call one of my fellow police officers the N-word, we're going to arrest you. Go ahead. Good. Can you imagine that cop wouldn't have a job right now?
Correct.
But here he is telling these guys, okay, if you chalk, I'm telling you right now, if you chalk with 2 kids and 6 cops, as opposed to what we saw in the riots, right? Where you had 40, 50, 60, 100 cops, thousands of rioters, right? Here, everybody turns out. You've got 6, 7, 8 cops to handle 2 kids.
Well, and this is just a testament to exactly our society. And when they pan over and you see like 6 people with their cell phones and no one actually using their brain, they're just like, we got to capture this so we can put it out and be Instagram famous or whatnot. It's just it shows the depravity, I guess, of our entire nation that no one else decided, you know what, I'm going to join in with them. But it was really interesting to see those 2 young people make that conscious decision because they were being told what's going to happen and they said, okay. And they did it, and they stood by their ground and their convictions, which good for them.
Well, I'm glad they did it too. I mean, if you back down from that, you're part of the problem.
Exactly.
They were there to make a point. They made their point, and the point is that the radical difference in the way justice is enforced in the 2 cases, it's unexcusable. This is banana republic stuff. This is what happens when one side has too much power, when progressive ideology is able to dictate to police officers who ultimately dictate who and will not be arrested. This is a big problem for the country. Get ready. All you people who couldn't take any more Trump, all you people out there who said, I'm voting for the guy who's civil, you're going to get a lot more of this. We'll see how civil a Biden administration is real fast.
Yeah, so luckily there are groups out there who are still willing to stand up for what is right. The Alliance Defending Freedom, they're the ones who are filing the suit for the First Amendment violations. And it was on behalf of the Students for Life of America, SFLA, and the Frederick Douglass Foundation. And you have to remember, this is D.C., this is where this happened. They have a permanent display of the whole Black Lives Matter painted across an entire street. You're going to remember.
Painted, not chalked.
And it was I think it was at the Democrat convention or whatever. They had the mayor standing out front of the whole display and just saying how solidarity.
And how many police officers did de Blasio take off the beat so they could protect the painting?
And so he could paint as well.
Exactly.
He got that little photo op there because then they painted over and then he went out there again. Just painting away, probably for about 4 seconds, and then he went back to killing groundhogs. So then the students chalked that message, and as you saw, Black Preborn Lives Matter, and they basically were trying to, the one kid is clearly white, and I don't know if the girl is white or not, but they were trying to address the fact that the unborn children of minority mothers have a higher likelihood of being aborted. And that's according to the Supreme Court, has even said that. Statistically, this is where the data is. And yet we choose to just ignore all of that because narratives.
If we had a consistent government, a consistent plan here, what you would do is you would ban aborting of black babies for any reason. That the killing of black babies for any reason must stop. Mm-hmm. And then you would mandate certain levels of abortion otherwise, right? As a kind of reparations.
Yeah. Right?
That's what you'd have to do. At the very least, maybe you wouldn't go that far, but you would certainly have to say no more black babies being aborted. Because that's the way they play the game. They're the victims. They're the ones whose lives and bodies have been demoted. They're the ones who've suffered this kind of oppression in and out with regards to their bodies for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They're the ones. And so to allow even black mothers to do this to black babies would strike me as completely incoherent.
So we do these stories from time to time where we take a look at various universities and all of the bias reports that have been filed because they're collected by various sources. In this case, the College Fix gathered some information.
Open records required.
Yep. And so they gather up what's happened in the past year at XYZ University. Well, this time we're going to take a look at George Mason University and what bias reports they have. And we've learned that a George Mason University professor stumbled upon a Bible and an accompanying CD in her classroom. So goes into the classroom. Oh my gosh, there's a Bible. Bias incident report was then filed. I can't even get through reading that without
the hysteria.
Laughing. Yeah.
It conjures up an image for me. It's like finding a bomb, right? She walks into this poor, frightened liberal professor, female, doubtless, walks into a classroom, sees a Bible.
It is her.
Sees a CD. And they call the Christian squad. Instead of the bomb squad, they call the Christian squad. And you get a bunch of dudes out there showing up like an exorcist team. All right? And they've got a robot that they send into the room. with a scope on it, right, to surround the Bible, to spray chemicals on the Bible, to make sure the Bible's not combustible. The men in hazmat suits rush into the building. They seize the offending bio. They've completely cleared campus and blocks all around the campus because we've got a rogue Bible here. And all that would continue to happen if it was actually a Bible course. If right before it was a Bible as literature I teach, or it was a religious studies class on why the Bible's horrible, somebody just left there, they still would go through the protocol.
That's probably true. Well, apparently
somebody's got to make a video of that.
Oh gosh, it'd be so good. Someone? Anyone?
Us?
So according to this specific report, the professor collected the items, that CD and that Bible. So how brave.
She touched the book?
And it didn't even smoke or anything.
How brave.
Didn't sear her fingers off. She collected, immediately reported the items to the school's bias incident reporting team, which classified the episode as discrimination and harassment against religion. But how?
It was just religion?
Against discrimination and harassment against religion. The professor accompanied her report with photographs of the Bible, as if you've never seen it. Anyway, and the items were collected by the bias team. They're the ones who came in the hazmat suit then.
That's right. They came and got it
from her. And then apparently it was just one of 12 incidents. So as I said, they do these stories where they put a bunch of incidents in one story, because they're always just funny to read collectively to realize how just awful these universities are. So in this instance, George Mason had on their bias reporting website, because that's where you go, bias reporting website, all their incidents between January 1 of 2019 and January 1 of 2020. So it's all last year stuff. Just if you're a George Mason student, listen up, because they encourage you students and you professors to report any act of discrimination, harassment, intimidation, violence, or criminal offense committed against any person, group, or property that appears to be motivated by prejudice or bias. So think back to that Bible. Clearly, it met all those standards. And according to the school, bias could mean negative feelings and beliefs with respect to others' race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, social class, political affiliation, disability, veteran status, club affiliation, or organizational membership. So,
Dr. Duke anecdote time. I remember about 5 years ago that I was being investigated for the climate of my classroom, right?
Yes.
I was being investigated.
Good times.
And so I was in class teaching. And so the geniuses over at the university, the idiot dean at the time, and his second in command, who's an English professor, assistant dean. I'm not going to mention them because they're a joke. But they decided what they were going to do is they were going to email everybody in my class, and they asked one question: can you please tell us about the climate in Dr. Pesta's classes? The funny thing is they waited until I was in class.
They do it.
So they did it right when I was teaching. So one kid raises his hand, "Hey, Dr. Pesta, I just got a question about the climate in your classroom." And so all of a sudden you started, kids pulled their phones out and everybody was getting these, right? So they did it right when class was going on. So they asked me what was going on. I said, oh, they think that I'm using the classroom to brainwash you or something. And so they did something really brilliant. One kid suggested it. They did something really brilliant. Let's all write back that it's too hot in here, that we need some windows, it's a little warm.
They don't know difference.
And they
between
really
weather and
sarcastically
climate.
wrote back. Oh, they were vicious. They wrote back, as far as the climate goes, put the air conditioning on, you tightwads. Or the climate in here is a little too misty, or it's too humid. And at that point, later my department head went to the university to talk to the dean about this, and all the dean could say was, we didn't handle that well. No apology.
No.
Just we didn't handle that well. The climate in the classroom.
This is the age we live in. Well, we'll do one more example from, the various ones I could have chosen. According to one report, a student in the multicultural/multilingual education program overheard two middle-aged women in the admissions office discussing their frustration with so many students waiting until the last minute to turn in their transcripts. Hello, it's a college kid. They're going to turn it in late. Yeah, makes sense to me. One of the women allegedly said she was particularly frustrated with international students who used excuses like time differences and language barriers to ask for filing extensions. And somehow that offended said student.
Of course.
And so you need to file an entire report, even though the women, it's their job to get that stuff handled because you're the one who's going to come and yell at them for not getting it back to you.
It would be an interesting sociological issue if somebody was to take some cameras, closed concealed cameras, and sat in a classroom and every hour as the teachers walk through, put a different desk on the lectern. Right, put a different book on the lectern where the teacher teaches from. Make one day have it be about the autobiography of Malcolm X. The next hour try
and
Frederick
see
Douglass. Then the Communist Manifesto, and then all of a sudden, boom, slip the Bible in there.
Whoopsie.
See what happened. It would be a very telling project.
Well, we finally reached that time where it's move over Voldemort. Do you get that reference?
Voldemort.
He who must not be named, because now if you even utter Trump, you shall be banned from everywhere, especially Harvard, where students in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, probably the worst student group ever, launched a petition trying to get school officials to ban former Trump administration officials from attending, speaking, or teaching at the university. Because, here's what happens in the D.C., elbow rub world. You get into any presidential administration, you rub a few elbows, all of a sudden you're teaching over at said university. Or if you're Pete Buttigieg and a failed presidential candidate, you also get to teach now too. Everyone gets to
Notre
teach
Dame
at
to bring
Notre Dame.
his particular brand of abortophile.
This is true.
His abortophile platform. Welcome at Notre Dame University.
Or you can just say you've taught somewhere and then not teach, and then you get to be president, maybe. If it all works out for someone.
Well, it does go to show
Anywho.
you. It does go to show you how much more radical the students are than the professors.
This
The professors probably smile at this. Are there professors on campus who think this is a good idea and sign the petition? Absolutely, yes.
But
the fact that the kids, without any sense of irony, without any sense of the fascism they think they're fighting by becoming fascists, they have no idea that black lists and prescription lists. No Trump supporter should be allowed to attend the university.
That's the best one. Is the attend. You can't even attend.
So if you got a picture with your cross country team wearing a MAGA hat, I'm sorry, you may be the valedictorian of your class. You may have aced the ACTs. We got a 100% score on it, but you got that MAGA hat disqualifies you from attending school at Harvard.
And for this specific instance, they're talking about Trump officials, not just the supporters, but we've had other stories. So
we've seen enough of that to know.
So
where does it stop?
This is true. The petition calls on Harvard to, quote, create and share with students transparent guidelines, unquote, with students if they do plan to allow a former Trump official on campus. The Harvard Medical School and the Divinity School reportedly also signed on to this petition. Because when you go to Harvard, one would assume that you're busy studying and learning things. But apparently if you're in the medical school, who, I don't know, will be the top surgeon someday across this country, you're too busy saying, no, we can't have Trump officials come anywhere near here because my feelings will be
the Divinity
hurt.
Department signed
And
on, which
the
that
Divinity
explains the
School.
previous story, right? Now we know why professors across the country are terrified and filing bias complaints because they find Bibles in their classrooms.
Yes.
This is what happens. Exactly my point. This doesn't stop at Trump officials. It's the contamination.
Exactly, yeah.
It didn't just stop with wealthy Jews in 1939. It didn't just stop with Jews who owned property in 1939. By the end of it, Jews who were 25%, 10%, had one Jewish ancestor, were considered Jews and packed off to the camps.
Yeah, but Harvard elites there were so pretentious that they put basically the cart before the horse on this, and they had to change the wording a little because not everyone signed on to this. So they wanted to change it. Now instead of banning them, they're going to be held accountable.
Oh, even better. So we'll have a little Nuremberg trial. We'll have Trumpenberg trials. All right, now that you've been accepted, we're going to have Trumpenberg investigations here. We're going to have a series of judges, right? And we're going to have. We'll provide you a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
That's good. Don't worry if you're a Trump supporter. We'll provide you a public defender, and we're going to have Trumpenberg trials.
That's interesting because Alan Dershowitz, who is a Felix Frankfurter professor of law emeritus at Harvard, he actually told Fox Business that the petition is part of an alarming trend at schools where administrators basically give in to what the students just demand, as we know. And he said, I will challenge any ban that may be enacted by asking to speak at the school. I will not kowtow to this new McCarthyism. And no one understands McCarthyism. Look at a history book. All right. He also added that if the petition becomes policy, he'll represent pro bono any Trump official who wants to set foot on Harvard.
But the problem is that already this has done enough to poison Harvard from hiring one. Right? I mean, the bottom line is if you're Harvard and this is circulating, are you gonna even offer this? It's only a problem when you offer one, right?
Well, and the thing is, the reason they had to change that whole, like, make it accountable instead is because, shockingly, in my opinion, the Kennedy School Student Council actually struck down the petition because where would most likely these Trump officials go? They would teach in the Kennedy School. Right. Kennedy, like John F. Kennedy.
Well,
anyway,
I mean, does that include the numerous Trump officials who hated him and quit? Hated him, betrayed him when they were in office and quit? I would think they'd be first in line.
They would be first in line. They would asterisk to put
They would come through the Trumpenberger trials, even, right?
Yeah.
With praise.
Well, and they'd be like, see, we have former Trump officials. We're just, we like them. It's just, certain ones who hawk books to spill all.
I'm not sure the stupid, idiot, moronic Harvard kids who put this petition out would even excuse them.
We'll see what happens on this one.
What would happen to Schindler here? I bet you they'd condemn his ass anyway.
Time will tell. It's time for some real education. Ever hear of Quintus Horatio Flaccus? No? Well, he's better known in English simply as Horace. He was born in 65 BC and died in 8 BC. In that span of life, he was the leading Roman lyric poet during the time of Augustus, who was the first emperor of Rome. Horace wrote elegant hexameter verses called satires and epistles, and caustic iambic poetry called epodes. The hexameters caused ancient satirist Persius to comment, as his friend laughs, Horace slyly puts his finger on his every fault. Once let in, he plays about the heartstrings.
And we once did a segment on Instant Classic on Juvenalian satire from Rome, the satires of Juvenal, which were much more invective. They were much more in your face, more graphic. Horace was much more dignified, and I like what Persius actually said here, that he's not like Juvenal, Horace, his satire. Horace slyly, so that the person being satirized almost doesn't realize he's the target. Horace slyly puts his finger on his every fault, but once let in, he plays about the heartstrings. He's a gentler kind of a satirist. And here we have a commentary from the first epistle, the first series of satires. Here's what the advice Horace gives you. Set a limit to your desire for riches. Set a limit to your desire for riches. So set a limit to greed. And as you gain more, you will fear poverty less. Achieving what you desired, make an end of your labor, lest you do as did one Eumidius. It's not a long tale. He was rich, so much so he was forced to weigh his coins. So stingy, he dressed no better than a slave. And right to the end, he was fearful lest starvation come. Instead, a freedwoman eventually cut him in two with an axe. Such she, an indomitable scion of Tyndaius' race. Do you want me to live then, you say, like Navius or Nementanus? Now you're setting up a war of opposites. When I order you not to be avaricious, I am telling you to become an idle spendthrift. No, no, no. Between Vesalius' father-in-law and Tyndaius, there's a mean. There's a mean between the rich man who lives like a greedy pig and the rich man who's so afraid of losing his wealth that he never spends any of it. Find the mean. The mean is the measure of all correct behavior, Horace says.
All right, before we go, just a reminder, the best way to keep up with everything happening with our various shows at Freedom Project is to follow us on Parler. So take 10 seconds today, right now, go, and follow at Duke Pesta, at Katie, and at Freedom Project. Thank you ever so kindly. Now, we want to take a moment just to show some love out for the Patriot Club members who keep this show going. And today, we'd like to give a shout out to Julie from Utah. Julie, thank you for all you're doing to support us. Now, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we're going to send you an awesome, superb tumbler. All you have to do is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now, let's wrap things up with the Fun fact of the day. In the Beatles song, A Day in the Life, Paul McCartney said that there's a frequency only dogs can hear, and he put it at the end of the song. So go and test that theory.
I remember the McCartney, not the Lennon version of the McCartney. Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head.
Yeah, you'd never
made
have
my
done
way
that.
downstairs and had a smoke. And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.